you ever wondered what it's like to ask a question to a top player? Well, today in Ask Diaphone, you can do that. If you join the Discord, you can get your question answered by me. I appreciate all the questions you guys have answered. We got a ton of them, and yeah, appreciate all the content. So anyways, the first question is how to get friends in fighting games. Hey Diaphone, a longtime viewer. I've tried multiple times, but I've always failed. Fighting games have a steep curve. It's impossible, or at least very hard to get them in the fighting games, and eventually I will drop. So I always try to keep it beginner, basic for beginners, so it's not overwhelming. But I think the general experience of fighting games for beginners is rough. So yeah, I totally agree. And as someone that has tried to get multiple people in the fighting games, including my wife, I've came to the conclusion that is really hard. I've came to the conclusion that it's not worth it, right? Because it's really hard to force someone to like something, right? Just like my wife tries to get me into liking Taylor Swift and like me into getting facials, I just can't get into it, right? That being said, I think there are some things that you can do to make things a little bit easier. So it's weird that I have that, how do I say, mindset, because I got into fighting games because actually my roommate in college showed me this, right? And no, facials, come on guys, facials as in like you put the face mask on and you put like, bruh, yeah, you guys are crazy, bro. Anyways, yeah, I saw this and I was like, oh shit, this looks really cool. I didn't even know people could play this shit competitively. My parents bought me Street Fighter Alpha as a kid, and I was like, damn, this looks really cool. I want to be a part of this, you know? And this is my first step into trying to play it competitively, right? And so I eventually, like, I played a lot with my roommate, I got better, and then I started playing with people in my local scene, right? And so everyone's gonna find like a different way to get into fighting games or any other hobby, but like it's really hard to force someone to like it. To me, it's just you have to make the tools available to them, right? So like show them how to get good, show them why this is cool, show them why you like it. All this is probably pretty genuine. And then if it doesn't stick, like that's not on you. You can't force people to act a certain way. So it sounds like you're doing the right thing. It sounds like you're being encouraging, you're keeping things basic, and you're trying to make it fun. And I think really that's all you can do. And if you want friends that play fighting games, or in general, if you want gym friends, then you find them at the gym, right? If you want people that play fighting games, you meet them when they're playing fighting games, right? So yeah, to me, I think it's a lot easier to find new friends that play fighting games, and like obviously you can have different friend groups for different things, and that's what I encourage. It's healthy to have multiple groups of friends. Anyways, when do I know I learned the lesson? Managing, learning, and competing in multiple fighting games. Hey Diaphone, love your videos, appreciate it. I picked up Street Fighter 6 and MK1, and I got 200 games in both. And basically, this guy saw a video of me saying that because I've played so many fighting games in my past, that when I pick up a new fighting game, I can apply all those lessons learned in those fighting games and apply it to a new fighting game, and therefore I can pick up things a lot quicker, right? I have better fundamentals, therefore I can learn the game a lot quicker, and I can, I have like EXP buff on the amount of time I play, and I do very well when games first come out, right? And I attribute that to playing a lot of fighting games and just in general, like my mindset towards learning, right? So he basically asks, what is the sign that you learn the lesson the game is trying to teach you? And my response to this is, there's no sign. To me, it's like if I spend 200 games in Street Fighter 6 and I spend another 200 games, like there's no like, oh, I hit the 200 hour mark, I now learned. It's not like I'm fucking collecting Pokemon or gym badges, right? It's like, oh, I beat the Street Fighter 6 gym, and now that lets my Pokemon be traded up to level 30, and I don't have to go back there, right? It's something very, very gradual, right? Again, I keep using the gym, but for example, if you get really good, if your deadlift you get a 315 deadlift, you're going to be stronger overall, right? It's going to help out a lot of your other accessory lifts. You still have room to improve on the deadlift and get even better. and you can still take those strength gains to other lists, right? And I think it's kind of like that. I don't think there's like a eureka moment where you're like, all right, I've mastered Street Fighter 6, now time to collect my next gym badge. So to me, it's like you don't really know until you start playing other games, right? So I'm guessing that you've probably had this sensation where you've played Skullgirls and then you play Fire Z and you're like, oh, the assists work pretty well in this game, right? Etc. So to me, it's just like the more experience you can rack up, the better. All right, Greenwood says, I'm old. My last Street Fighter game was Street Fighter 2, and most of my fighting game experience comes from games that I had on the PS1 in college. After a 25-year or so break, I need to improve in every area. That's fair. It's so funny that we're talking about that. I need to find like a better stream to watch, because this is looking kind of boring. Oh damn, everyone's doing this shit, bro. Did I not got anything good? All right, I guess we're watching Marvel. God damn it. Sorry for the YouTubers. Anyways, I have trouble in a few areas. 1, reaction time. I'm old. Once it'll improve, it'll still be slow, but I'm not trying to win tournaments. 2, consistency of inputs. Modern controls are not as much fun for me. I'll use a classic. That's fine. Learning to recognize what opposing characters are doing still. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so let's talk about reaction time, because I think there's a general, how would I say, like misconception that as you get older, you just can't react to stuff, right? And I think that's generally, if you look at studies, Daigo's still reacting to the eye. He's 40 some. I think that your reactions don't actually slow down that much. That's why people can still drive when they're 60 or 70, right? I assume you're not 60 or 70. This reminds me a lot of a James Chen post, right? So James Chen made a post saying like, I hate this game. I can't react to DI. This is impossible. What do I do, right? And I actually responded to it, and this might be a little hard to find because I think James Chen likes to post on Twitter. Maybe if I don't post as much on Twitter, it might be a little easier to find. But I replied to a James Chen thing. Okay, yeah, so here's a replay of me getting murdered by DIs. Note that in the majority of cases, I don't even press any buttons until well after I've blocked the DI. It's not a late reaction, it's a lack of reaction, right? So if you look at the input, right, literally there's no DI pressed. This isn't like, as you can see, they hit back. They saw the DI, right? If you look at the exact frames, they're holding down back, holding down back, holding down back. DI starts, they don't react. At the very end of DI, they reacted. They just reacted with the wrong thing. They reacted with back, right? And then they just pressed a bunch of buttons in in rage, right? So to me, it's not that the reactions are, how I say, like, it's not that they're too old and they can't react. They're not even practicing the right response, which is you see a DI and you need to react, right? Like, even if you're late, you should be able to still press it. So something like this can be drilled, right? You just put the dummy in training mode, have them do, DI, or have them do drive rush and practice reacting to it. And if you drill it enough, you get better. The other thing the advice I gave to James Chen was, it's okay that you miss, right? Like, people miss stuff all the time, but you need to practice pressing the DI button even if it's late, just to build that muscle memory. And so every time you're failing, you're actually improving, right? Because right here, you're not actually learning any reaction. And this DI, it's almost a second. Like you probably have better than second reaction. I mean, half a second reaction seat. He can't see it. He can obviously see it because he reacted with back, right? And like, there's other things you can do. Like, you can use audio cues. That maybe like he's colorblind or something. I don't know. You can use audio cue for it, right? So to me, like, you have to practice it. Again, consistency inputs. Again, this is all like the drills I recommend to beginners are, one, like, focus on consistency of inputs, right? Because if you can't get any inputs out consistently, you're gonna have a bad time. You're playing a different fighting game, and then work on the reactions, right? And then work on learning to recognize characters. So it's interesting, like, all three of Greenwood's points are all things that come with playing the game more. doesn't have to do anything with being old. Like realistically, you probably just haven't played the game much, right? But if I could give any advice, it's focus on the consistency of inputs and drill that before you play online every day. And the other two will start to come a little bit more naturally. And once your inputs are consistent, move on to trying to react to shit, and then focus on matchup specific stuff. Because matchup specific, you don't really need to focus as much because you only run to the same matchup once every 22 matches, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I actually totally agree with Sajam, where reactive play is so important, right? And a lot of people, how do I say this? Like a lot of beginners, actually, I'm calling James Chen a beginner. In general, like as someone learns a fighting game, you go from more preemptive to more reactive, right? You go from more of a 1-player game to a 2-player game. And the more you can react to stuff, the more you're going to be consistent, but it takes practice. It's hard. And that's why people start, you know, with button mashing, because it requires no reactions, and then slowly but surely they start to learn to react to more shit. But it's stuff that has to get drilled, and it's a natural evolution for any type of fighting game player, right? Yeah, totally agree. All right, anyways, next question. Baruka, what are some things I can do to stop mashing? I grew up playing a lot of Tekken when I was a kid, and I used to mash as a kid. Wow, this is actually a perfect segue. I play Grand Blue now, and I'm mainly a Vera player, and I'm trying to reach S rank. What I struggle with the most is messing up my inputs due to mashing. Try to input things too quick, or I'll hit buttons I don't need to, and it ends up leading to some frustration on my end, and then I'm guessing the more frustrated you get, the more you mash, right? Essentially looking for advice on things I can try to break the habit and let nerves get to me in the match. So this is the classic, like, how do I stop autopiloting question, right? And my general response is people autopilot because their mind is overwhelmed or their mind is focused on other things, right? So when you think about why you autopilot IRL, like, for example, when you leave to go to work or school or whatever, right? What shoe do you put on first? I don't know what shoe I put on first. You probably don't either, right? And the reason is that you're focused on other shit and it's boring, and you can outsource that task to a different part of your brain, right? And so autopilot happens all the time. Autopilot in fighting games too. It's not something that necessarily needs to avoid, but you need to find something to replace the autopilot with, right? And you'll also notice that autopiloting is a lot harder to stop when you're in a sweaty match. So like when you're playing ranked against people of your skill, it's easier to autopilot certain things because it's like you're so focused on trying to win, and you're so focused on trying to stop certain, how I say, like you're trying to focus on them jumping, right? So when they do something else, your mind's overwhelmed, and you're like, all right, let me revert to my old primal habits, right? Which in your case is mashing. So my first recommendation is like try playing games against easier people where you have them, where you could still like be competitive while focusing on things to break the habit, right? So you have less mental strain because you're playing a worse player, right? So play more casual matches, try against the computer, try mashing less. You'll probably find mashing a lot less prevalent, right? Because it's a lot easier. The skill difficulty is lower, right? And you have to slowly keep ramping up until you can play against people without mashing. The other thing that you can do is be okay tanking your rank, right? You manage S rank, all right, well, that means you could do it again. And if you play focused specifically on not mashing, you're probably gonna lose more, right? But that loss is eventually going to cascade into more wins once you get the bad habit out, because you already know what you need to do. You just need to overwrite the autopilot, right? And the third thing is just drill, right? Like eventually, if you keep drilling the same combo, then the muscle memory will take over a match and you'll start mashing less. So yeah, I guess in my opinion, how you stop autopilot mashing, one is drill, and therefore you'll overrate your muscle memory. Two is play against worse people so you can still be competitive while focusing on the important skill of not mashing. All right, modern players struggling with flabbing. Hey, Street Fighter 6 is my very first fighting game, thanks to Mario controls. So far, I managed to have 3 characters mastered, but I'm still struggling during matches. Biggest weakness is I don't know how to lab. What? Okay, this is a really weird question because I skimmed it, right? I realized I'm playing Bison, I'm in Diamond. I don't know how to anti-air. I don't know how to take my turn. I don't know how to set up. I have no B&B. I don't know when to use a 4-frame or 5-hit attack. Combos I've practiced for an hour, completely forgotten match. All right. My guess is I'm calling fucking cap on that because I've coached silver players, I've coached gold players, I've coached platinum players, people that are worse than you in ranked that know all that shit, right? So you're obviously doing something right. You're ahead of 80-90% of the player base. You at least know one of those things, right? And not to mention you can literally just watch a guide online. It could be mine, it could be others, and you'll learn that shit, right? I think part of the issue is you're probably just not doing it right. And that's again building muscle memory. The character literally just came out, so yeah, things take a little bit of time to learn, especially if Street Fighter 6 is your very first fighting game, right? And the more characters you learn, the faster this process will be, right? But since it's your first fighting game, it's gonna take a little bit of time, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? My guess is you have these things. My guess is intuitively you know that turns exist, right? That's how you know not to take your turn. Okay, this actually sounds like a fucking Dunning-Kruger effect, right? I think this is what's going on. If you guys have seen this, right? It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And the idea is that you start up here, right? Where you're ignorant and you feel like you know everything about the game, right? And then you start to learn more about the game, aka getting masters with other characters, and your confidence in what you know goes down, right? And so my impression is you're probably like in this area where like you actually know some of the stuff, but because your brain has expanded and you realize there's a lot more to fighting games than you initially thought, the confidence goes down and you're actually just increasing your knowledge. And so you're on the right path, right? You're on this slope and you're probably on the way up to getting to expert, but yeah, it takes a lot of time, right? Because the fact that you know that turns exist already puts you above like 50% of the population, right? This isn't applicable to persons, but only a group of people the way. Is that true? I don't know. Maybe I need to learn more about Dunning-Kruger effect. My understanding is, I mean, you could argue this is a group of people, right? I'm sure Afro Kane's not the only person that feels this way, right? So yeah, maybe I'm gonna get Dunning-Krugered on the Dunning-Kruger, but we'll see. But anyways, that's my take. Is like you're probably actually making progress, and you probably just have lower confidence because like now you're in masters and you're getting your ass kicked, and it seems like it's a long stride, but I mean you're still ahead of like 90% of the player base, and you probably know some of that stuff because a lot of people could just literally look at up, and you probably just need more experience with the character because learning new characters are hard. And I don't know where to use 4-frame or 5-frame attacks. That's the only thing that's like a little bit more, how I say, niche. I'd say with Bison, generally you're using 4-frame almost all the time. The 5 frames I think are stand light punch and crouch light kick, right? Crouch light kick's a good drive rush. Stand light punch is more of you use it for the additional range. So sometimes you might need that extra range to punch something, right? But like, yeah, that's a little bit more niche. I wouldn't expect a Bison player to know that if they're not master, right? Or you definitely don't need to know that in order to get master. So yeah, it's yeah, very interesting. Okay, anyways, Eerie, what is a good replay to get feedback on? What's a good replay to get feedback on? So I assume you're just talking about general, right? So when I do replay reviews, I have a few guidelines. First guideline, it has to be recent, right? The amount of times that some people submit a month-old replay and then I say like, oh, you should do this, and they're like, oh, well, I do that now. Or like some stupid bullshit like that. That's the number one thing that pisses me off. So make sure it's recent, like literally within the last day or two, so it's like recent in your memory too. Or if it could be from that day, even better, right? I think playing against someone of your skill level is really important, right? If it's I think playing against someone that's a blowout, it can be helpful because you could be like, here's what you could have done, and then you could feel less hopeless. But because the vast majority of people that you're going to play are generally around your skill level, it's really important to focus on improving in that area, right? And then after that, I think analyzing losses are a bit more important, right? Just because there's usually more learnings to take away. So I think as long as it meets those 3 criteria, it doesn't really matter too much. I think everything's good. I think in general, games with more stakes like tournaments or ranked are also better too. All right, Alex, seriously sticking to a main for more than a few weeks. Season 3 of Guilty Gear, floor 10.5, picked up Street Fighter, dope. I just can't seem to stick with a main. I know it's been a long term. So I assume this is how many games you've had on each character. Kai's my most played character, but I don't really want to be a Kai main. All right, that's easy. Don't be a Kai main. That you answer yourself. You answer it yourself. I feel like each character has some things that make me want to main them, and so whoever I pick, I feel like I'm kind of selling. I want to have a main that I'm sure about. I know I like. Part of the problem is that character personalities I like, gameplay. So there's a bunch. So basically, the vibe I'm getting from Alex is there's a bunch of different things that make a character or like mainable, right? And it's a trade-off, right? There's not going to be a perfect character, and so it's like, what do? I have this perfect character in mind, and I don't know why I can't play that character, right? Like, 300 hours and you still really don't feel like I have a main. So my first thought here is that an issue? Is it an issue you don't have a main? I don't think so, right? As someone that basically doesn't have a main for Granblue and has played most of the cast and has learned a lot by playing a lot of the cast, I don't think it's an issue. I've played a lot more for 300 hours. Obviously, I'm going to Evo, so I'm forcing myself to play 2B, but I don't really have a main, right? Like, I haven't spent that much more time with 2B than like any other character. I'm just picking 2B because I think it gives me the best chance to win in the 1 week of preparation that I have to go to Evo, right? I think a lot of people, like, how I say, like, people that switch mains constantly, I think are just built different, like straight up, right? And there's actually nothing wrong with that. I think there's like people have different personalities, and some people have like a very single-minded personality and they only want to play this one character and they know it right off the bat, right? Where Alex is more like me, where I like playing a lot of different characters, and to me it's more fun. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think I know Guilty Gear players that play multiple characters. I know Punk. Who's Punk's main? Anyone in chat, do you guys know who Punk mains? Anyone in the comments know who Punk's mains? Punk won CEO with Akuma and Cammy, and they played Bison, right? Punk literally just won CEO with Akuma, but they main Cammy. I don't know. You got one of the best players in the world that plays multiple characters, right? Sonic Fox. That person plays so many different characters, right? So Mena, who does Mena main? Blanca, Akuma, Zangief, Luke. So what I'm trying to say is it's actually okay to play more than one character. Yes, there's some very strong players that only play one character, right? Like my goat Hikaru only plays Aki. They literally only grind out that character, right? But there's more than one way to be good at a fighting game, and I think you're doing the right thing. Just keep trying to play more games with characters you might like, and if you don't have a main, like when it comes to tournament, just pick who you think you're gonna have the best chance of winning with. All right, I think that's it. Oh, quickly switching between games and bracket, balancing multiple fighting games. Yeah, it's fucking hard. I can tell you that one right off the bat. I enjoy playing multiple fighting games at the same time in my local tournaments. I typically enter Street Fighter 6, Drive, and Granblue brackets. Sometimes the bracket, yep, it's hard. It's definitely hard. Any tips for strategies when quickly switching between games or balancing competing in multiple brackets, I know some players, oh shit, Aaron the Mac, GC Yoshi, 2 goats to the channel, succeed at high level tournaments and mobile fighting games, and I'm curious how they manage to do it at such a high level, right? All right, so the first trick is if you're really good, right? Like if you're a fucking goated fighting game player like Punk, you cannot play a game for like 2 months and then come back to Strive and still be better than 95% of the player base, even without a warm-up, right? Same thing with me, like I can enter fucking Guilty Gear. I haven't played Guilty Gear since Slayer came out, right? Which is like 2 months ago. If I went to Evo and I entered Guilty Gear, I could still get out of pools free. That because the gap between high level and like intermediate is just so fast that like I don't need to practice in order to get there, right? And I think it's the same for a lot of people like GC Yoshi and Aaron, where it's like because they had so much practice and their fundamentals are so good, like they can kind of gap without being like 100% optimal, because you are sacrificing a lot of different things when you play multiple fighting games, right? You're expending more mental energy. You're not as focused. You might get your muscle memory confused, etc. So yeah, I think that's definitely an issue. The other thing you have to think of, and I know some people like Chris G, think that playing multiple fighting games is actually a net benefit, because if you've ever entered a local and just played one game, which by the way, if you've never done that, you should do it and see what the difference is. But it's hard to stay warm, actually, right? Like it's hard to like stay in that tournament mindset, hard to stay locked in, because you have to play a match and you have to wait around for 30 minutes, right? So maybe it's a net benefit too. I don't know. But to me, it's like, as long just get your fundamentals up and you'll find balancing, competing in multiple games easier. Ultra Alex, thank you so much for the prime. Appreciate it. I think I also missed a prime from Pick Celery. Thank you so much for the prime. All right, I think last question. Playing tournaments versus ranked. Hey, I made this goal to enter as many online, offline tournaments as possible. Dope. I've played in some before, but had to stop due to school. Sure. I love entering brackets, but I feel like I always play much better in tournaments than ranked. Me too. I feel like most people are that way. And I find myself not nearly as focused and losing to a lot of stuff that I would normally be on top of in bracket setting. So true. Me too. I normally just use ranked as a practice. I still don't see an issue here, but I would really like to climb higher, seeing how I can compete with higher level players when there's something on the line. Yeah, I've run into this problem, and I think it's an issue for a lot of people, right? If you run into this problem, do you have any advice? Consistent mindset. So it sounds like your tournament mindset's good, so I'm not going to cover that, right? So the issue is you want to ascend rank, but you think of it as practice, which it is practice, right? So you have two options, right? And people, the most common option, actually, I want to say this. I guess there's 3 options. Option 1 is the bad option, which is try to ultra sweat ranked and don't think of it as practice and try to squeeze out every rank point you can. I think a lot of people do that. I think it's a bad idea. Option 2 is do what you're doing and stay the course and realize that as you practice, even though you're not as locked in, your MR will still improve, right? Obviously, you're 1500, you're still better than like half the master people, right? So you just take that debuff, right? 3 is, what I do is I only play ranked when I'm trying to sweat, right? And then my other matches, I play like long sets, I play casual matches, I play other shit like that, right? So when I'm playing ranked, I treat it like a tournament, and therefore I can like lock in. And actually, because I'm too lazy to communicate with people for longer sets, I have an alt account, right? And the reason I have an alt account is not to like be a hidey or anything like that. It's the main reason I use it, although I do hide it, is because I play wars intentionally on my alt account. I literally have 100 less MR on my alt account because I'm not nearly as focused, right? And it's been consistent. I've been doing this for the last 2 months, and my alt account consistently has 100 less MR because I'm not as focused. I'm more using it for practice. And then when I want to play sweaty matches, I get on my main account and I play sweaty matches. I think it's actually a 120 MR difference, which if you know anything about ELO, that's freaking huge. That's a massive. It doesn't sound like 120 MRs that much, but it's actually like it's basically like a 20% increase in win rate on my main account, right? So choose your own adventure, but yeah, I don't think this is that bad of a problem. You just gotta figure out how you want to tackle it. Street Fighter 6 is my first fighting game now with 370 hours. Managed to get to a few characters as master. Okay. Problem is now I've reached masters, assigning what character, finding the motivation to grind the legend is kind of tough because the legend grinds fucking hard. Yes. I know there's not an easy answer, but having the problem with liking too many characters, deciding what to truly main to get at the top has bugged me through before. Keeps me from playing the character. If I ain't committing the character, I can go for the next final rank legend. Yeah. Okay, so my guess is you have a few characters to master. I don't know what your MR is. I'm gonna guess around like 1500. I have no clue, right? The gap between 1500 MR and legend is fucking massive. It's huge. It's many hours more, right? Especially if it being your first fighting game. We're talking like at least like 500 to 1000 hours. Like it's actually a massive grind, right? So one, I think you need to set like a more short-term goal. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's mastering a few more characters just to get your fundamentals up and understand the game better. Maybe it's to get to like 1600 MR, right? But I think you're at the right idea. I think you're just trying to like, you're trying to reach for a goal that's like a little bit too lofty at the start, right? You have to me, like Legend's a long-term goal. You need a short-term goal, or you need multiple short-term goals, because in order in general, just like goal science, you want to break it up into like more approachable manners. So it sounds like you got a right idea. You know, another character get a master, repeat cycle. That's going to get your fundamentals up. That's going to get your base understanding of the game up. So you can start to make the grind for legend, right? So it's up to you kind of how you want to do your legend grind. But yeah, you need like a short-term goal. And I don't know what that is. And if you feel demotivated with the characters you currently have, I mean, playing more characters and figure out how you want to play seems like a very good idea. All right, that's it. Anyways, thank you guys so much for submitting questions. Join the Discord. No questions next week, I guess, because Evo. So I'll be at Evo, but there'll be a bunch of content anyways on the main channel and side channel. And I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.